This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hi everyone, I know we're all hurting right now. Crypto has taken a beating, and Goldman Sachs says flatlining is the best case for stock-heavy portfolios. Flatlining? Zero returns? Sheesh. In situations like these, we can take a cue from the world's best investors, because a groundbreaking Ernst & Young study last year revealed that 8 in 10 ultra-high net worth individuals invest in alternatives. However, Bank of America's CIO recommends investing in one specific high-performing alternative to rescue your cash. He's talking about fine art. 2/3 of millionaires already hedge against inflation with art, according to UBS, because the last time inflation was this high, art appreciated by an unprecedented 33.2% annually. Now, obviously, most folks don't exactly have tens of millions lying around to start buying Banksys and Basquiat's, but that's where Masterworks comes in. They're helping people keep their cash intact by offering fractional investments in the top 1% of the art world. And with a recession on the horizon, they've seen sign-ups increase by 320%. That, combined with the fact that they speak to every investor to make sure art is right for them. That means there's a wait list, but I'm hooking you guys up with priority access to skip the line, and it's as easy as going to masterworks.com and using promo code CryptoConversation. That's masterworks.com, promo code CryptoConversation, and you can see important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.com/CD. Again, that's masterworks.com, and use the promo code CryptoConversation to skip the line. And now, folks, it is on with the show. My guest today is Nick Swinmurn. Nick is the founder of Zappos. I'm sure Nick will tell us exactly how we say that. He's a Golden State Warriors co-owner, but more recently, Nick has turned his attention to Web3 and is heading up what is described as the first NFT-powered play-and-earn sports prediction game. Play Hellebore. Man, I might need some corrections on some of these, Nick. As we get deeper into the podcast, we'll learn all about it. But first, welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks. Excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. We'll do what we do at the start, Nick. I'll get you to please introduce yourself. I've given you a little bit of an intro, so perhaps you can expand on that a little bit. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So lifelong entrepreneur. Claim to fame, I guess, was founding Zappos in way back when, 1999. And then after Zappos, left after 7 years and went on, just dove headfirst into a bunch of things, whether it was tech, food, fitness. Created a fitness concept, Basecamp Fitness, and sold that in 2018 during COVID. Got back into collecting sports cards, which then led me down the path towards NBA Top Shot, which then led me to NFTs. And I just became fascinated once got into that space. Was never big into crypto, just more into, the opportunity to create brands, create communities. Didn't really ever care if it was a $1,000 idea or $1 billion idea. I think the fun is the same. It was just bringing something to life that didn't previously exist, or being able to have a different perspective on something. So that's the quick background. Originally born in England, moved to the US when I was 8. That's me.
Yeah, very nice, Nick. And I think it's a really good point. One of the most powerful ideas, I guess, around NFTs and Web3, or one of the things that we have seen is there've been a really good entry point into, let's say, Web3 / blockchain, even / crypto. But for people who weren't particularly interested in cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin, or trying to trade cryptocurrencies, or the more esoteric nature of the blockchain, but the idea of being able to collect anything from sports cards to play games, or be able to bet on things, well, that kind of speaks to a much wider audience, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was aware of it I was intrigued by it. I probably looked into it from time to time, but I just either didn't find it exciting enough or found it too intimidating, a little bit over my head to figure out, like, why would I be the one to correctly predict what's going to happen here, right? Or why should I invest in this? And then it was NBA Top Shot just made it really easy. It took something I was familiar with, which was collecting sports cards. It changed it. It said, hey, we're gonna have these video highlights instead of a static card you can hold in your hand. But when it came to the Web3 component, I was still paying with my credit card. It was the first time I'd seen someone say, hey, let's keep this, familiar. Pay with your credit card. Now we're going to put this message on the screen that says we're going away over to the blockchain to do something. You don't need to worry about what that is. You just need to know something's happening. And then when it's done, it's resolved. And so that made it feel approachable. It was like, okay, so this is something that can exist with existing behaviors. This isn't something where I have to, learn a whole new vocabulary and learn a whole new system. And so that was the first thing that kind of piqued my curiosity. And so obviously from there, it was like, well, that's one thing. And I'm not super interested in, collecting basketball highlights, but it made me more aware of NFTs in general. And then as I got into NFTs in general, obviously I, created a wallet, became more interested in Ethereum and started to follow a little bit. But yeah, I think it's, I think it's definitely a good entry point for people like me that aren't, particularly savvy.
For sure. And, I think the intersection of sport and NFTs has just a huge amount of potential over the years ahead. I'm sure you agree with that. Just for the benefit of the listeners, Nick, and well, particularly for me, I'm just a guy from New Zealand, so I'm less familiar with American sports myself. But a lot of people that are listening to this podcast will be based in the US, and they'll be a little bit more familiar, perhaps, with certainly American sports, probably with your own background. But again, just tell us a little bit about your kind of, I said you're one of the owners of the Golden State Warriors. And obviously, this intersection between sports and Web3 is of particular interest to yourself. So yeah, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I was born in England. So the first 8 years of my life, I was just a football mad at the time. I didn't know there was another football mad kid, right?
Yep.
And then I moved to the US and I actually discovered basketball. My dad came over on a work trip ahead of time and he brought back these two huge buttons, like big metal buttons you'd pin on your shirt. One was the Golden State Warriors, one was the Houston Rockets. And I was just fascinated by the logo. I didn't know what basketball was, hadn't seen a game, but I was fascinated. So when we moved over here, about a year later, I said, hey, where's the Warriors? Where's the Rockets? And my dad said, well, the Rockets are in Houston. It's pretty far away, but the Warriors are your local basketball team. And I just latched onto that, right? They became my favorite team of teams. They had the mystique of being something new, and also they were my local team. I discovered baseball, the Giants and the A's. I mean, Bay Area was a very sport heavy area. We had two football teams, the Raiders and the 49ers, two baseball teams, the Giants and the A's, the basketball team, the Warriors, eventually a hockey team, the Sharks. So, I discovered American sports and the US is fortunate in those three sports, basketball, American football, and baseball. Their professional league is the best league in the world, and so you were watching something at a really high level. They didn't have relegation promotion, so it created a little bit of or eliminated a little bit of the fear. It also probably eliminates a little bit of the wild passion at times. But I just became great, just collecting. There was a baseball card store, Stamps in the Attic, down the street from my house. And I would just go in there and I'm collecting primarily baseball cards at the time, but over time, basketball and then football and then basketball. So I stayed, like many people do, passionate about those three sports combined with soccer. Soccer's the one, strange one in the US because it was always, well, the US is such a huge sports market that eventually, it'll have the best soccer league, right? When I was a kid, we'd go watch the old NASL. You'd have the San Jose Earthquakes was a local team. George Best played for them, and it was fun, but you knew it wasn't at the highest level. And then eventually they have MLS, which is still fun, a lot of passionate fans, but it's that one strange thing in the US of will, all fans support a league where it's clearly not the best in the world? And so now with, obviously more accessibility, we have the Premier League Saturday, Sunday mornings. We have Serie A, we have La Liga. So there's more and more soccer fans in the country, but not necessarily, as more soccer fans grow, it doesn't necessarily mean it trickles down to the American League. So, but really it's a hotbed for all of those sports. And, the traditional way to support them was go to the games, buy the merchandise, collect sports cards. If you were a local company or a national company, maybe you do a sponsorship, you get season tickets, that kind of thing. So I think what Web3 does is really there's so much clamoring to be, to be more closely aligned. There's so much interest in the players, the teams, how to express your fandom, how to, compete. Obviously, fantasy sports, traditional fantasy, where you pick a team and based on how the players perform on the field is huge. Sports betting, we're now in the process of seeing sports betting be legalized slowly state by state. So there's this huge variety of sports. There's a huge audience clamoring for more and more. And as people shift their attention away from, in the past, we would just sit in front of the TV and watch the game for 3 hours. Right now, the younger generation's not as interested in that. They want to get the highlights. They want to be more social. They want to be interacting differently. I think that, along with, the rise of Web3, really creates some interesting opportunities to connect fans with the sports they're passionate about in different ways. Everything from, like with Play Hellebore, we say, hey, do you have a minute per day? Log in and make your picks. Simple pick. Who's going to win this game? And if you have a little more time, then you can advance through the levels and you can spend a little more time making predictions where they've got the odd or the odds or the line there. Like, the Warriors have to win by a certain number of points versus just winning. And then competing in head-to-head leagues, just like fantasy sports. But instead of saying, hey, you pick a team, and that's a team of real players. Those players will compete on the field, and you, based on how that player does on the field is how you will do. We're trying to explore, are there opportunities for the fan to be the player? So grab an NFT, attach an NFT to a prediction. If you make that correct prediction, the NFT increases the rating of it, and then take those NFTs with higher ratings and let them play a role in the outcome of the head-to-head game. So really it's, there's a variety of sports. Attention is shifting. We're not wanting to sit and watch a 3-hour game anymore. We're wanting to interact more quickly, more efficiently, in a more provable way where we can see how we did, how we're doing compared to others, have things, NFTs, rewards, whatever, that we're able to express and kind of show off like, hey, look, I earned this by interacting, as well as the traditional forms of collecting and wearing your team's colors and merch and stuff. So I think a really exciting time to find such a exciting new technology and combine it with an industry that covers so many groups of people that are so passionate about one sport or one team or one player. So that's why for us, we thought like, hey, this feels like a really good place to start.
Right, got it. Thank you, Nick. And look, you've started to talk about it a little bit there, but let's maybe just bring it back to the beginning a little bit. So we're talking about Play Hellebore. Is that how you say it? And so I guess let's just really simply tell us what Play Hellebore is, and I'd love to know where the name comes from too.
Yeah. So Hellebore is a flower. It's a bright, colorful flower that can grow in the darkest and coldest of environments. And so we had this kind of genesis story when we first looked at NFTs and thought, you know what, we need to be doing this. I don't want to be someone saying this is what everyone should do or this is how it should work. I want to understand it. I want to learn it. I want to prove to myself that I can mint something and I can, do merch drops and do airdrops and let people claim things and start telling a story, et cetera, et cetera. So we did an initial drop and we created this origin story around this planet. And we named it Hellebore. It was this dark planet, barren. And we just had an image of one colorful flower growing in the middle of a barren planet. And the idea was a bunch of humans had ended up there, right? And so they now had to live vicariously through what was happening on Earth because they couldn't go outside and run around on this planet. So that was the very first origin of Hellebore. And then I'm kind of going to the background, and then they discovered some natives, right? Some creatures that were running around on this planet, and those were the Cyber, these little gremlin-looking creatures. So that's kind of where we got the name Hellebore, is basically a planet for, you know, competing and making predictions. So I had been collecting NFTs, and I got excited, as did everyone, right? And I saw everything. There was a point where everything you bought went up, right? And that was intoxicating. And you knew that was silly. You knew it wasn't going to last forever, but it was still enjoyable while it happened. And then you realize this isn't sustainable. This is going to end, and there's got to be more to this. And one of the big buzzwords being thrown around is utility, right? Like everyone's saying, "Oh, I own the IP to my NFT. I can do what I want with it." And I was thinking, well, how many people are actually going to, you know, take their NFT, their PFP image and do something with it, like turn it into something. So utility is going to have to be something more. There's going to be a lot of people talking about building games, but they're talking about building metaverses and 3D worlds that we're all going to run around in. And that's going to take a long time. And also, not only is it going to take a long time to build, it's going to be a big time commitment for the holders when the game finally arrives. So really just started, you know, the way Hellebore kind of came about was like, well, what are some forms of utility, and how can we get away from speculation? And so it was like, okay, well, what if we could create a simple game that tapped into existing passions or habits, right? They're used to viewing games, used to following teams. And what if we could make it a very, very minimal time commitment, like something where you just connect, bam, make a pick, and get out of there with the option to stay longer, but at the bare minimum, not ask people to read a white paper to figure out how to play the game. And then how can we focus on, you know, a fair exchange on day one? Like, hey, this is what the NFT is going to cost, or maybe it's free, and here's what you're going to receive. And here's why we think this is a fair transaction right now, regardless of whatever happens in the future. We should both feel good about this transaction. So we said, okay, well, let's mint an NFT, and immediately let's have that as a playable character in a game. Okay, that's step one. Step two, let's create a reward site where as soon as you mint or claim an NFT, you connect your wallet and you see, is there anything else attached to this NFT? And let's make it so the answer is yes. There's either a digital or physical reward attached to that NFT. So anytime someone mints or claims a Cyber, which are the NFT players in our game, immediately they connect to the reward site and they see what they got. And it's either going to be another Cyber, which will be playable in the game, or it might be a gift, a discount code to use in our physical shop. So those were the two things where we thought, okay, so that feels like a fair exchange now. But we don't want that to be the end. We still would like there to be the ability to, things to go up in value. And so one, let's keep all the existing things in place. Let's have rarity, let's have different traits with different rarity. In the future, let's let different traits unlock different experiences. But let's try to put the power. What could we do to make the user, if, there's always this tension between project and community, whose job is it to grow the value of the NFTs, right? Sometimes it's the community looks at the project and says, hey, you're not doing enough to make this thing go up, which is usually, they just need something that everyone can speculate on. And the project looks at the community and says, hey, this isn't a traditional company. This is a community. You guys should be building the buzz and building the excitement around this project, because that will benefit all of us, because the price will increase. That seems like a little bit of a, a tug of war, with no, it's basically putting the burden back on each other, because it's really hard to quantify exactly what either of us could do. So how could we simplify that? So we said, well, what if we made the NFT not only a playable character in the game, but the more you played that character, in our instance, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, you're presented with a prediction. Let's say for soccer, well, England beat Italy, and you just, in order to make that prediction, yes or no, you have to choose one of your Cyber NFTs and select it to be paired with that prediction. And if you're right, the value of that cyber goes up one. If you're wrong, it goes down one. So now user action is what will increase the rarity of an NFT, because there will be less people that have, for example, a cyber that ever gets to a +10 rating than there will be a cyber with a +1 rating, just because the chances of being correct 10 days in a row, or 20 out of 30 times, whatever it is you need to do to get to a +1 when you're going backwards every time you're wrong, will make it much more rare. So now, okay, the user could make something more rare, but why would that increase the value? It's like, well, because if we make those players transferable, another of the built-in things that Web3 does better. Now, any player around the world playing in a league against their friends who wants an edge, we say, hey, the higher the rating, the more that cyber will help tilt the odds in your favor, in your pick. Now, in theory, once we get enough leagues of people playing against their friends around the world, there will be demand. Someone will say, you know what? I really want to win this match. I need a cyber with a +10 rating because that's going to really help me. And they'll go on OpenSea or any of the other marketplaces and they'll find one. And now the person who's, taken the time and shown the skill to build their cyber up to a +10 has a way to monetize that value that they've built. And so we thought, okay, that seems interesting, right? That seems like we'll put it in the hands of the holder to make correct predictions, be rewarded both within the game if they want to play themselves, and make that value transferable to another user. Now that seems like we've got a fair transaction on day one, and we still got the ability for the holder to increase the rarity, scarcity, on top of all the addition, the traditional ways that any project can do it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where we ended up with, and we looked at sports because we said, the project a lot of times with new IP and creating games is all the content you have to create. Well, sports is just built in. There's there's content every day. There's leagues around the world going on. We just need to tap into that. So that was I'm kind of giving you long-winded answers, but that was really the step-by-step process that we took internally.
I've got it. It makes sense, Nick, and it sounds really interesting. And I think it's important also to note. I've seen online when you've been talking about it, you kind of make a distinction that when Hellebore, it's not sports betting or gambling. It's something else, right? So maybe talk about that as well. Well, at least that's how you describe it. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the same way that NFTs, right? Like it was kind of that gray area people would of like, is an NFT a security? Like, do we own part of the project, right? And now and you realize just from watching, there's so many different interpretations of what's going on. There's people that believe if they have one of a 10,000 PFP project, that they own 1/10,000th of the brand. There's some people that are aware, nope, we just have a product from that company, and that company is free to go sell, a stake in the real company to someone else. That doesn't affect us. If the company sells its IP, it doesn't affect us. It's just we have an item that we can resell. So that it was kind of frustrating to watch, like that slowly spread across the reality around that, right? And you'd watch some companies, they kind of liked keeping it in a gray area. Some companies I don't even think understood. And some companies tried to explain it the best they could, and still it was, you had holders hearing it and how they wanted to hear it. So when we looked at this, we thought, sports betting in the U.S. is illegal, right? There's rules in place, there's systems in place to stop people from wagering on events and losing money, and it's highly regulated, and it's slowly becoming legal state by state, but it's still regulated even when it's legal. So we wanted to make sure, like, we're not interested in going in the sports betting market. We don't want to be in an industry where the only way for us to win is for all of our customers to lose, right? At a very base nature, that doesn't seem like the best idea. So there's certain criteria, right? You need to either have nothing to risk, or there's no prize, or at least there's a path for someone to get all the way through to the prize without being required to buy certain things or take certain risks. So when we first started, we looked at all that. We said, let's make sure that we have not accidentally done anything which has made this betting. And let's, what we want this to be is a prediction game where you take your own assets, you make simple predictions, and you potentially increase the value of your own assets well, you increase the value of your own assets within the game, and potentially you create, tangible value outside of the game. But it's not sports betting. You're not wagering anything. You're not putting something up and then receiving a certain percentage or multiple of that back. It's just a very lightweight game with some built-in mechanisms to create value, but definitely not a sports betting game. I think we try to make a game that's interesting enough so that people who are familiar with sports betting or do play fantasy sports, we try to take the best parts of traditional fantasy sports, what we thought were the best parts of simple predictions, which are similar to what's used in sports bets. Don't reinvent the wheel there. People enjoy making predictions and trying to be right, but let's make sure that we're not accidentally or improperly representing that this is some kind of sports betting.
For sure. All right. Well, as we just finish off this part of the podcast, Nick, where are we at right now? I mean, I saw you guys were doing a beta for a while. Is that still ongoing, or is that finished? Can anyone come along and start interacting with Hellebore now? What is the status of everything?
Yeah. So as of today, date of recording, we had a beta. We let people in, got people making predictions, claiming their Sibers, creating some leagues. And then we decided to close the beta. We saw items that we could improve, right? So one of those is onboarding. So it's easy to say, hey, once you've got a wallet, it all makes sense. But we looked at it. You know what? There's things that we could do now that we've gotten the game out there and gotten feedback, both from people playing, but also from people that we didn't know or people that we did know, and just realizing, you forget how intimidating it is in the beginning, right? So we said, let's close the beta. So while the beta's closed, people are still competing and playing in their leagues and making their predictions. And let's watch what happens, and let's look for pain points and let's improve those. So we're improving some things inside the game. We're improving the onboarding process so that people won't be required to have a wallet to start playing. They'll be able to use an email login and begin playing a full functioning game, still have NFTs that are assigned to them. And then in the future, as they realize, there's some functions that I need to have my own wallet in order to be able to maximize, then they'll be able to create a wallet and seamlessly, move those NFTs over. So we're in the process right now of improving that. And then we'll be reopening the game, and then we'll be launching 2 additional sports, basketball and hockey. So we expect both of those things to happen. Right now we have football, soccer, and baseball that are live in the beta, and predictions being made each day. So we'll reopen it, and at the same time add basketball and hockey coming up in the next month or so.
Awesome. And for anyone interested in learning more and getting involved, then I guess the best place to go is playhellebore.com, right, Nick?
Playhellebore.com. Yep, that'll be getting a refresh. Also on Twitter at playhellebore. I'm at Coast Talk on Twitter. You can follow me there too if you have any questions pertaining to the game.
All right. Thank you for that. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll have some fun. We'll run Nick through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Back in 1 second.
Here's what's being said about Masterworks.
My name is Jacob N. I'm from Long Island, and I've invested over $73,000 with Masterworks. My portfolio performance just wasn't cutting it. I researched all these alternative investments, like crypto and NFTs, but they didn't make sense to me. Then I read about Masterworks in Forbes, and I signed up right away. And now you can too. Thanks, Masterworks.
Get VIP access at masterworks.io and use promo code JACOB. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/DC.
All right, we are back, and I'm with Nick Swinmurn, who, of course, is, Golden State Warriors co-owner, but now the man behind Play Hellebore, which is, really interesting intersection, I guess, of, fantasy sports, Web3, NFTs, all that good stuff. Looks like a lot of fun. Nick, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure.
Just going to run some questions at you, Nick. Just give me Yeah, kind of quick, snappy answers. Hot take style is how we roll. Question 1. Interested to see what you say. Nick, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I probably fell off, but I'd say probably lean towards multi-chain.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. What would you say then is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion, Nick?
That it's not going anywhere.
Nice. Okay. Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, feel free to speculate here, but, Web3, fantasy sports, what does it all look like in 10 years' time? NFTs?
I think it's the foundation of fantasy sports at that point. I think it's brought on a larger audience, created much more opportunity. And I think it's something that, brings the people in that found it, couldn't figure out why they would do it. I think it gives them the why.
Nice. Now, you've mentioned soccer a few times, Nick. English by birth, so, you have to take an interest in soccer, but you're a sports guy as well, obviously. Am I correct in thinking the, what do they call it? Is it the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup? The big... Yeah. The big soccer or football tournament happens every 4 years. That's coming up next month, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who are your picks? Who are you supporting, and who do you think wins?
Well, I'm always rooting for England. Rooting for the U.S., but I don't think the U.S. has a chance of winning. So I'm hoping England, but if not, I think Brazil.
Yeah, very nice. A lot of people like the Brazil team, don't they? They play a fancy brand of football, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's hard not to like them.
All right. Back to the hot take questions. William Gibson, sci-fi author, famously said, Nick, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I think it's probably Web3. I mean, there's so much opportunity, such a low barrier to get in and start building. And people are going to look back and say, I missed it. I wish, it was too hard. And it's like, no, you just weren't paying attention. It's right there. You got to just be curious, start learning. You'll realize it's fairly simple, and there's a ton of opportunity for people, technical and non-technical like myself.
Absolutely. And I mean, just on that, you alluded to it before in terms of how, I suppose, a year ago or even a bit further back, you could buy an NFT and it would start going up. And there was a lot of euphoria in the market, obviously, and that euphoria has gone, and so have the values of NFTs, and so has the volume. You will have seen the stats in terms of the fall off in volume on OpenSea and other platforms. What is it like to be building a kind of a platform or an IP like this in this kind of market?
I think that McDonald's sells cheeseburgers every day. There's some days that, gas stations sell a lot of lottery tickets, but, I think there's the daily opportunity that's there every day. And then throughout that, there's going to be times where, speculation is going to run wild, but the majority of the world won't change. So you want to kind of find those opportunities that are going to be there regardless of irrational behavior.
Very nicely said, Nick. All right, time to get weird for a second, time to zoom out. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think it's probably a matter of, each person's individual circumstances, but I think utopia. I mean, I think we're so lucky to be here. There's people obviously born into, we're put into terrible situations, but anyone listening to this podcast is most likely in a really good spot. You just got to look around and see the bright side and see the opportunity.
I love it. All right. Finally, Nick, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Well, I haven't read much. How could this question be the one that stumps me? All I seem to be watching lately are shows about Vikings and documentaries. So I don't know. If the Vikings versus Saxon stuff is fictional, then I'll have to say that. But I don't have a good answer for that one.
That's all right. I mean, Vikings, I guess you'd say Vikings, that kind of qualifies as fantasy, which is certainly sci-fi adjacent.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, this has been fun, Nick. I've enjoyed talking to you. Please take us out by, again, just telling people where they can find you on Twitter, what they should do if they want to get involved with Hellebore. And you have your own podcast as well, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a podcast. It's Coast Talk. It's available on all the usual Apple, Spotify, etc. Through my @Coast Talk on Twitter. Can find more information on that. Appreciate you mentioning that. Maybe we can switch roles one day. I can put you through the questions.
For sure.
And then, but yeah, otherwise, playhellebore.com, @playhellebore. And yeah, really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. It's going to drive me crazy all night that I didn't have an answer to the science fiction question, but I will deal with it.
That's all right. The easy one to go for, a lot of people just go, what comes to mind for a lot of people is just the first Matrix film, which is a classic answer. But anyway, thank you, Nick. All the best. We'll be following along. Hope it all goes well. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks for having me.
All right, there you go. That was Nick Swinmurn from Play Hellebore. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Nick was a good talker. Makes sense, I suppose, that he's a podcast host because, yeah, he can talk. So that was a good one. Great episode. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Nick. Yeah, and that is the end of the show, really, for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. But that is today's show. Thanks, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.